So I always thought that cat was creepy as hell. But then they came out with this new one and what the fuck? Who the hell's gonna let that in their house? Pet Sematary, the 1989 one, not the new one. Hadn't gotten to see that one yet. Is the adaptation of the Stephen King book of the same name, which he himself said he went too far. So you know when Stephen King says he's gone too far, it's probably gonna be fucking crazy. I'm a huge Stephen King fan and have read tons of his books, including Pet Sematary. And it is one of his most popular books for a reason, because it is one of his best books. Not the best, but one of his best for sure. The book has a lot of themes going on, but it ultimately deals with every parent's worst nightmare and a what-if scenario that goes horribly wrong. The book is full of emotionally terrifying, gut-wrenchingly real moments, and is a fantastic read from beginning to end. So how about the movie? Well, regardless of it very much being a product of the 80s, it's not that bad. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that it is the most faithful adaptation of any of his work so far. Faithful as far as what takes place in the movie, not necessarily the tone. The movie follows Lewis Creed, his wife, and 2 children as they move to a new town in, you guessed it, Maine. I know, right? A Stephen King story that takes place in New England? Who would have thought? After arriving at their new home, they meet their elderly neighbor across the street, Judd Crandall. Judd tells us, and the Creeds, about the road that goes in between their houses. Or actually, he tells us about the road, and about how a lot of big trucks come flying through there from the nearby plant, and about how said road has killed a lot of pets over the years. That road's eaten up a lot of pets over the years. The Creeds also discover a path behind their house that goes through the woods and leads to the Pet Sematary. This is apparently where the town's kids have been burying their dead pets for almost 100 years. Lewis and Judd quickly become friends, and for a time everything seems okay in the world. There's a young man struck by a car who dies at Lewis's work. Oh yeah, did I mention he's a doctor? Well, he's a doctor. That deeply affect him, and he does start to have some vision/nightmares of this young man, warning him to stay away from the Pet Sematary. Beyond that though, everything in the world seems right. For a while. Lewis's wife Rachel and their 2 children, Gage and Ellie, go out of town to visit her parents while Lewis stays at home. While they're gone, Ellie's cat, the aforementioned Church, is hit by a truck on the road and killed, or eaten up by the road. Judd, knowing that Ellie is going to be heartbroken by this, tells Lewis that there is another way. He takes Lewis beyond the Pet Sematary to an ancient Indian burial ground some ways behind it. They bury the cat, they go home. Cat shows up the next day unfazed. But he is a little different. I'm going to stop with the real details in the story right there. If you've seen Pet Sematary before, you don't need me to tell you what it's all about. But if you haven't, I don't want to ruin anything else, because this is when the good stuff really starts. I don't know if I'd really call it good, but you know what I mean. This is one of the most faithful adaptations of a book that I've ever seen. They truly did cram in almost every single scene from the book into the movie in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Which can be a good thing, but it's also one of the things that holds the movie back. Since they did cram in so much from the book, and they're only given about 2 hours of runtime, while you will have the scenes and the actions of the characters, you're not really given the time for the emotion that leads to those actions to develop. So sometimes when these characters act in these scenes, it seems a little off and like it's a bit much for what's going on at that moment. I mean, the explanations are all there, and we understand why they're reacting this way to the things that are happening and or being said, but due to there being so much and everything moving so fast, you don't have that genuine emotion and passion behind what they're saying and doing. While people are always clamoring for faithful adaptations of beloved works, I think that this movie is a good case study as to why sometimes cramming everything in from said beloved work isn't always the best idea. This is why some smaller things should be cut out so that you're given the time to focus on the big picture. Once again, it's not incomprehensible. You understand why they're acting this way. You understand what's going on. It all just seems extremely abrupt. And probably one of the main reasons it is so faithful to the book is because the screenplay was written by Stephen King himself. The performances in the movie are what you expect from the late 80s. They're very much a product of their time. A lot of the acting is like that TV miniseries drama hokiness that we had in the late 80s. It's not awful, but it definitely doesn't stand up to what we expect nowadays. Everybody here does a fairly good job, but the standout is definitely Fred Gwynn's Judd Crandall. He plays the part with a large, over-the-top hokey glee that you just can't help but love. I mean, I want this guy to be my neighbor. I don't want him to tell me about any shit behind my house, but I want him to be my neighbor nonetheless. The only character that's really bothersome would be Ellie, played by Blaise Bardal. Now, she's a child actress, and I do feel a little bad about shitting on a kid's performance in a movie. And you could tell she is trying. And maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was the direction. I don't know. What I do know is that every time this kid shows up on screen and speaks, it is borderline unbearable. Thankfully, the camera doesn't center on her often so as to not ruin the film. She really is trying though, you can tell. Poor thing. Or as they say here in the South, bless her heart. From a technical standpoint, the movie's in good shape too. It's more or less well directed, well shot, and looks good all around. I will say a standout is the practical effects that they use. It's not really a super effects heavy movie, but the ones that they do employ look great. Victor Pascal, the young man that dies earlier on in the movie, looks great with his brain hanging out and pieces of his face hanging off the side. He only shows up here or there and mostly in dreams, but when he is on screen, it looks really good. That does bring me to one thing that they did change from the book that I didn't really care for. I don't mind changes from book to screen. As long as they preserve the essence, core, and tone of the original work, I'm okay with changes. Hell, in this very review, I said they should have cut some things out of it. And while there wasn't much that they changed, and there was only a few additions, and there's one character that they kind of took two characters and made one, I was okay with all that. They did interject Victor Pascal's character more into the story, more or less in the role of a walking exposition dump. And I really didn't like this. He seemed out of place in some moments, and even more so near the end when he tried to interject a little bit of comedy into it. I'm okay with a little bit of comedy, but when he was doing it, in the moments he was doing it, it was very out of place. In the original story, he does show up in the beginning, much like he does in the movie, and he is referenced a few times, but you never see him again like you do in this version of the story. Supposedly there's a cut online you can get where people have cut him out as much as possible. I mean, he doesn't kill the movie or anything, but it is unneeded and out of place in my opinion. Now, the original work that this is based on was one of the creepiest and yes, scariest books that King has written. The movie, though, while it does retain all of the aspects of the story, I think that since it is missing that emotional buildup that the book has, the scares just really aren't there. I mean, there's entertainment to be had here, and there's scary moments, but they're not really scary. Except for Zelda. And if you've seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, well, just know that yes, there is at least one scary character in this movie. And she is fucking terrifying! Scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, and has a similar effect now. But beyond that, while the movie is entertaining, it's not really scary. And honestly, what's happening on screen and or on the page isn't the scariest part of this story. It's the overall themes that are absolutely terrifying, especially to any parents out there. At the end of the day, Pet Sematary 1989 was a good time. It's not the best Stephen King adaptation ever made. You know you are. Shut up! It is a good movie, and while it does try to cram too much of the original story into this version, thus robbing it for the most part of its emotional impact, it is still an entertaining watch that when you got some free time one night, you should check out on Netflix. Check it out one night and then read the book and see the few things that they actually left out of the movie. It ain't much, man. They crammed a lot into this movie. So there it is, guys, my review of Pet Sematary 1989. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Come on up and have a beer. Yeah. That's one mean road, all right. There's that damn road. Uses up a lot of animals. Dogs and cats, mostly.
Now I'm looking forward to seeing the new 2019 Pet Sematary. But in the meantime, I guess... it's bad. So bad.